The National Desk, America's News Now. Now, reaction pouring in after Maine's decision to kick Donald Trump off the state's primary ballot, as similar court rulings are still pending in other states. What happens next? Then law enforcement agencies warning of a heightened threat environment. Now, New York City is preparing for potential attacks and protests on New Year's Eve. And what you need to know about price hikes going into the new year, specifically for your medicines. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Eugene Ramirez, and right now, dangerously high waves are hitting the West Coast from several intense storms in the Pacific Ocean. Parts of California flooded, causing several people to have to be taken to hospitals. The central and southern California coast could get 15 to 25-foot waves through tomorrow evening. Now, these storms are also bringing rain and wind to that state through tomorrow, when the waves could also impact southern Oregon. Now, further east, many states are getting rain that will shift to snow by tonight through tomorrow. Freezing rain could disrupt some travel in parts of Maine. Today's one of the busiest days at airports across the country this holiday season, and with people headed home from those holiday gatherings, the TSA is expected to screen more than 2.6 million people at security checkpoints today. But according to the Federal Aviation Administration, the busiest day will be tomorrow. Their officials expect more than 48,000 flights Saturday. And so far today, air travel has been pretty smooth for most of the country. According to FlightAware, there have been quite a few flight delays out of San Francisco, though. Going beyond the podium now, more pressure building on the Supreme Court to decide whether states can keep former President Donald Trump off their primary ballots. Maine now joins the state of Colorado in deeming Trump ineligible for office under the 14th Amendment for allegedly participating for his role in the insurrection. California, however, made the opposite call. National correspondent Atra Elnashar explains the decision and what comes next.
The question of whether former President Trump should appear on states' primary ballots is back in the spotlight. Maine's Democratic Secretary of State deciding to keep Trump off the ballot after receiving challenges to his eligibility. One of them brought by a bipartisan group of former state lawmakers who point to Trump's actions after the 2020 election.
The weight of evidence that I reviewed indicated that it was, in fact, an insurrection. And Mr. Trump engaged in that insurrection.
The Trump campaign calling this attempted theft of an election and the disenfranchisement of the American voter. Meanwhile, California's Secretary of State Shirley Weber, also a Democrat, kept Trump on a list of certified candidates. Like the Colorado State Supreme Court decision last week that also said Trump is ineligible for office, the Maine decision is widely expected to be appealed and ultimately reviewed by the Supreme Court. Now, we're just learning that in Colorado, Trump's name will stay on the ballot while that process plays out. All of this is uncharted legal territory. Even the most seasoned legal experts are at odds about whether Colorado and Maine's decisions are legally sound.
I am not a Trump supporter. I want him to lose the election fair and square. But without the thumb of the judiciary, Congress and only Congress can pass legislation implementing the provisions of the 14th Amendment. It leaves nothing to the states.
It's a concurrent responsibility on federal and state government officials to enforce the Constitution. It's common sense.
Politically, all of this could help Trump as his primary opponents echo claims he's unfairly targeted.
We will love the man, because I do.
Challenges to keep Trump off ballots are pending in Alaska, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, South Carolina, Texas, Vermont, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. In Washington, I'm Atra Elnashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Ohio Republican Governor Mike DeWine has vetoed a ban on gender-affirming care. The governor had until today to announce a decision on the so-called SAFE Act. That bill would have made it illegal for minors in Ohio to take puberty blockers. In his announcement, DeWine said it's not a black and white issue.
All those on each side of this issue sincerely and truly believe their position best protects children. These are truly complex issues, and reasonable people can draw vastly different conclusions.
Governor DeWine added that such a ban would have negatively impacted families and children with body dysmorphia. That ban also would have blocked transgender student athletes from participating in women's sports. DeWine says there's still improvements to be made, and he'll meet with lawmakers to determine which steps to take next. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley pushing forward with her campaign, making a stop today in Concord, New Hampshire for a town hall. Her controversial comments on the cause of the Civil War continue to draw some backlash, though. Christie said this today.
Right now, I think New Hampshire is seeing the slippery, slick Nikki Haley who won't answer questions definitively, won't say whether she's willing to be his vice president, won't say whether Donald Trump is unfit to be president, won't say whether slavery is the cause of the Civil War definitively.
To the Israel-Hamas war now. Palestinians rushing to escape central Gaza as Israel continues to pound that region. Around 850,000 people are now in Rafah and the surrounding areas, according to the United Nations. South Africa just launched a case at the UN's top court accusing Israel of genocide against Palestinians. It's asking the court to order Israel to stop its military action in Gaza. South Africa says Israel's actions are intended to destroy Palestinians in Gaza as a part of the broader Palestinian national, racial, and ethnic group. Israel has previously denied similar accusations and vows to continue its campaign until the terrorist group Hamas is wiped out. Meantime, Israel says its soldiers who accidentally killed 3 hostages in Gaza were not justified in that shooting. The Israel Defense Forces say troops were aware that hostages could be in the vicinity where they were killed. They called the shooting preventable, but noted that it happened in a combat zone. 2 hostages were shot while waving a white flag. The third was shot because soldiers did not hear a command to hold fire. Any discipline for the mistake has not been announced. Back here at home in the U.S., law enforcement officials across the country right now are ramping up security ahead of New Year's Eve celebrations, especially in the Big Apple, New York City. The FBI and police department there will be watching for any threats from a command center, they say, and within an expanded security perimeter around Times Square, the center of all the action. Law enforcement agencies say the Israel-Hamas war has led to heightened threat environments. And though New York police say that there are no specific threats right now, they are also planning for the possibility of pro-Palestinian protests there.
I think it's extremely admirable the governor is making efforts to combat anti-Semitism.
Kentucky now has an anti-Semitism task force to deal with the alarming increase in anti-Jewish hate crimes over the past few months in the state and what we've seen across the country. The task force has 18 members. It's a group that will provide an annual report to Governor Andy Beshear, summarizing their activities, findings, and recommendations by the end of January. Developing now, police and FBI agents are searching for a woman charged with murdering 2 of her children in Colorado last week. Local police say that 35-year-old Kimberly Sigler was found injured at a Colorado Springs apartment with the 2 children and a 3rd child who is now recovering from injuries. She was last seen Saturday. Police say she may have left the state of Colorado. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, homeschooling has grown in popularity, and now there's a debate over whether those families should get taxpayer dollars and be subject to government oversight. National correspondent Janae Bowens has this story.
I pulled my youngest out of school when he was going into 3rd grade.
Vita Bratton and her husband, PT, were not pleased with the quality of education their 2 sons were getting at their schools. The family has now been homeschooling for more than 5 years.
Nothing's ever really free.
She's on the fence about receiving taxpayer funds for homeschooling if it were to become an option in Maryland, because she's concerned that could mean more government oversight.
I don't want anybody making a decision about what I want or what my husband and I know is best for our children.
It's a worry some homeschooling parents have as it grows in popularity, and lawmakers look to expand school choice policies. Analysis from the Washington Post shows there could be as many as 2.7 million homeschooled children in the U.S., up from about 1.5 million before the pandemic. And according to Ballotpedia, 5 states created new education savings account programs this year, all with different restrictions and requirements, but essentially give public funds for approved educational expenses. In Utah, their ESA program allows for up to $8,000 per year for eligible students who do not attend public schools full-time, but the state does require an assessment.
If homeschool students are also taking those funds, they should also be required to adhere to whatever the regulations are in that state for the public funding.
Dr. Angela Watson says oversight of the funding does not mean regulating homeschooling, but understands the fear of a regulatory slide.
You can have the money, and you only have to test, but then over time, they try to slide in all homeschoolers.
It's why Vita Bratton says the choice to take the money and the choice to abide by testing and other requirements should remain.
I think you have to think about what comes with that.
created a division within the school choice community, with some homeschoolers nervous about the government regulation that comes with public funding.
And Janae, how has the increase in homeschooling impacted public schools?
Right, so it has certainly had an effect. Government data shows public K-12 schools lost more than 1 million students between 2019 and 2021. Homeschooling definitely a factor. Eugene.
Janae Bowen's in Washington tonight. Thank you. And coming up here on the National Desk, what you need to know about the southern border as it shapes up to be a big issue impacting the 2024 presidential race. Then American drug makers set to raise prices on hundreds of drugs, how you can prepare going into the new year. And an expert shares tips for parents on how to make sure kids only see age-appropriate content when they go online. We're back after this. More buses full of migrants rolled right into New York City this morning, defying Mayor Eric Adams' new executive order signed Wednesday that restricts the times when these buses can arrive in the city and also requires 32 hours advance notice so officials in New York can prepare for the arrivals. Now, no punishment was given this time, but the mayor's office said police plan to increase enforcement moving on. And a recent police polling shows that immigration will be one of the top voter issues for the presidential campaign. Some Democrats are urging President Biden to take on the issue just more aggressively than he's been doing so. Nearly 2/3 of voters disapprove of how the president's handled that. The National Desk, Didi Gatton, has more.
Former President Donald Trump on the attack with a new ad about the southern border.
While the world burns, Joe Biden has created a violent threat in our own backyard.
Blaming President Biden for the increase in migrants and stating current policies have allowed fentanyl traffickers and terrorists to enter the U.S.
We all know there's a problem at the border. The president does, Democrats do, and we're going to try to solve that problem consistent with our principles.
The issue shaping up to be a major concern for voters in the 2024 election.
We need to make sure that we are a country of laws. The second we stop being a country of laws, we give up everything this country was founded on. So we have to secure the border.
A recent Harvard-Harris poll shows more than half of voters believe illegal immigration is a very serious issue right now, while 57% believe Trump has better immigration policies than Biden. U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported nearly 250,000 encounters along the southern border in November, the third highest monthly total on record. The mayors of New York, Denver, and Chicago say their cities have struggled to accommodate the influx of migrants, as many are bussed into the cities from other states and need more help from the federal government.
I'm a Democrat, but I'll say the Biden administration has absolutely dropped the ball. I'm not going to let them off the hook. They have left us in the ditch with this, and that's unacceptable.
In recent weeks, both Democrat and Republican lawmakers and Biden administration officials have been working to negotiate a border deal, which congressional Republicans want in exchange for future aid the U.S. provides to Israel and Ukraine. I'm Didi Gatton reporting.
Taking a look at your money now, mortgage rates continue to drop for the 9th straight week. Freddie Mac said the 30-year fixed rate mortgage averages 6.61% now as the week ends the year. That's the week ending yesterday, rather. That's down from 6.67% the week before. That drop has been caused in part by people expecting the Fed to cut interest rates in the new year. The price of oil has ended 2023 lower than it started, about 10% lower than the beginning of the year. That's the first annual decline in prices in 2 years. This drop comes despite a series of production cuts from the oil-producing group OPEC+. Top drug makers are set to raise U.S. prices on at least 500 medications in January. According to healthcare research data, Pfizer, Sanofi, and Takeda Pharmaceutical plan to hike up their prices. This increase comes as the pharmaceutical industry gears up for the Biden administration to publish discounted prices for 10 high-cost drugs. That's set to happen in September. Inflation right now slowing. Unemployment still low, but millions of Americans are still pessimistic about the U.S. economy. The National Desk's Angela Brown breaks down some new polling.
They say that all politics is local, and when it comes to how people feel about the economy, nothing could be more true. Republican Representative Jason Smith from Missouri.
People are struggling just to get by. In fact, 80% of Americans have less savings than they did pre-COVID. So it's a struggle.
This December Quinnipiac poll found 56% disapprove of the way President Joe Biden is handling the economy. 39% approve. Ted Rossman from Bankrate says the economy is doing better than people think.
80% of Americans recently told Pew Research that the economy is poor or fair. That doesn't jive with a lot of the numbers. GDP growth was a robust 5% last quarter. The unemployment rate is a mere 3.7%. That's one of the lowest in 50 years. The stock market hit a record high this week.
The president, for his part, trying to downplay any concerns when asked about the economy for 2024.
Sir, what's your outlook on the economy next year? All good.
But families on Main Street are still getting pinched. Inflation slowing, but food is still high, increasing 2.9% since last year. Shelter up 6.5%.
People are still being weighed down by inflation, though. And I think that cumulative effect is important, where prices are not growing as fast as they were a year ago, but they're still growing, and they're building off a higher base. And interest rates are high.
Experts are now saying a soft landing or mild recession is possible for 2024. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
New tonight, President Biden calling on Congress to approve more aid for Ukraine after Russia launched the biggest aerial barrage of the war overnight. Ukrainian officials say the 18-hour onslaught targeted civilian infrastructure, killing at least 30 people, injuring about 140. In a statement, President Biden says the U.S. provided defense systems, helped save lives there, but warns there will be no additional aid unless Congress acts to pass more funding. The president has proposed a supplemental package including more than $60 billion in aid for Ukraine. That proposal is currently stalled right now over border security and immigration policy talks. What your doctor recommends for good health might be different than what you're considering in the new year. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares 3 ideas that might not be top of mind.
Hey there, everybody. Any goal toward good health is a good thing. But if you ask your primary care doctor what they would choose for almost all of us for New Year's resolutions, you'll find a perfect prescription for healing.
We want to keep you out of the emergency room for those things that we know are preventative.
One of those preventative things, quite often, is a heart event. So first top doc request in the new year?
Set up an annual appointment with your primary care doctor.
Dr. Thomas Shockley says that appointment can help you intervene should it be necessary before your health is in crisis. Second top doc request, at that appointment, ask your healthcare provider if your blood pressure is within normal limits.
The lower your blood pressure, assuming you're not lightheaded or passing out, is a good thing for all the organs that have a rich blood supply, like your kidneys and like your brain and your heart, where the vascular supply is very important. High blood pressure does damage to all those.
Finally, Dr. Scott Woods told me if you're going to pick your own health-changing behavior this new year, such as eating better, quitting smoking, adding in exercise, or even losing weight, start small.
For example, someone might be 30 or 40 pounds overweight based on their BMI, but they should set a goal of losing 5 pounds.
Obviously, your own doctor can be a bit more specific to your own needs. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonas reporting.
And coming up here on the National Desk, there's been a dramatic rise in food insecurity across the country. The impact that's having on Central Texas when we return. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From a local bar owner in Wisconsin sharing ways to celebrate New Year's Eve responsibly to experts in Ohio urging parents to protect their kids online. We're taking the pulse of America. We start in Austin, Texas, where food banks are working around the clock right now to combat food insecurity.
This is an incredibly difficult time of year, particularly when kids aren't in school.
President and CEO of the Central Texas Food Bank, Sari Vatsky, says Central Texas is currently grappling with unprecedented levels of food insecurity.
When there's already 1 in 5 children in Central Texas that don't know where they're going to get their next meal, the holidays can be an incredibly difficult time when school isn't in session.
But it's not just a student problem. A USDA report has found food insecurity is up across the country by 10 million individuals. A delay in SNAP benefits and rising costs, creating a perfect storm here in Central Texas.
No one should go without, but it's incredibly hard during the holidays. And the increased cost of living, inflation, the demand our services an all-time high.
Vatsky says her food bank works with a network of 250 nonprofits across 21 counties. There are also mobile pantries and pharmacies where anyone needing assistance can find help.
Kids of all ages are asking for more screen time. Mom Kayla Hovey says her 3-year-old Adelaide and 5-year-old Isaac both got tablets for Christmas.
So many kids are on screens and, they're doing school on screens and all that stuff. So it's hard to get them away from it at all.
From computer games.
Put all the way over my belt from here.
To tablets. And the smart TV. They've quickly learned to navigate it all. Cyber safety expert Stephen Smith has 5 tips for parents to make sure kids only see age-appropriate content online. First, talk with your child and set expectations for how the device will be used. Second, sign a contract and define how each member of the family can use a device. Third, use parental controls. Smith suggests Bark, Custodio, or Circle. Hovey says they have apps that add additional filters for their kids' devices, but nothing is perfect.
You have to still have an ear of what's going on. You have to be diligent about it, which is half of the parenting battle.
New Year's Eve is one of the heaviest drinking holidays of the year. According to the American Addiction Centers, Americans consume an average of 4.4 alcoholic drinks that night.
The old adage that most people do go out and party and drink for New Year's Eve.
Each year, there are hundreds of traffic fatalities on New Year's linked to alcohol-impaired driving. So with the extra traffic comes extra reminders for those out on the roads.
Obviously, if you've been drinking, don't be driving because we don't want there to be any issues as far as accidents or people who drank too much getting in trouble for operating while intoxicated.
From police and bar owners alike.
They can leave their cars in the parking lot overnight. We're not one of those places that tow them. We'll have Fox Valley Cab and other companies, they can call. And
that also includes the Tavern League Safe Ride program. Vandovic encourages anyone to make use of it so people can have their fun while also being safe.
I think this will be a good one to have for.
And still to come here, what's on Google's list of top health-related searches this year? We're back after this. Check this out. Google has just released the top trending health-related searches in the U.S. from January through November of this year. The big issue appeared to be strep throat. Specifically, most of people searching Google for how long is strep contagious. Some other top searches include how to lower cholesterol and what helps bloating. Google says those questions were ones that saw high spikes in traffic over the period compared to the previous year. The Detroit Pistons lost in overtime to the Boston Celtics and tied the NBA record with 28 straight losses. The Pistons have been on an unrivaled single season of failure over the past 2 months. This past Tuesday, the team set the NBA record for most consecutive losses in a season, 27. But with this latest loss, Detroit now ties the NBA's overall losing streak, 28 games.
Yeah.
That's Dolly Parton, unmistakable voice there. She made a surprise call to a superfan in Utah. LG Gold is battling terminal cancer and had made a bucket list after being diagnosed. Meeting Dolly Parton was on that list. Now, Dolly told LG that she was happy to know that she touched his life with her music. She thanked him for that honor. LG's wife says she's not sure how Parton heard about his bucket list, but it was probably through a friend. What a nice thing to do. It's going to do it for us this edition of The National Desk. We invite you to join us this evening for the evening edition of The National Desk. I'm Eugene Ramirez. Thanks so much for watching.